Hey everyone, it's Marvin. Thanks so much for listening to Books and Boba. I just wanted to take a quick second to remind you that Books and Boba just launched our Patreon to help support our future endeavors. Rira and I have been running Books and Boba for the last 6.5 years, and we've always talked about wanting to do more, including expanding our content offerings, being able to go to book events and do more coverage. And so to help us get closer to those ambitions, we started a Patreon to help us grow and to better support books by Asian and Asian American authors. We are offering 2 tiers for our Patreon. The first is our regular Boba member coming in at $3 a month, which will give you access to our brand new Books and Boba Discord server, so you can engage with your fellow Books and Boba Club members and also Rira and myself in real time. This is where we'll be aiming to move the bulk of our book club discussions, but rest assured we'll still have a presence on Goodreads as well. And our premium tier is our Honey Boba member tier, coming in at $5 a month, where in addition to access to our Discord server, you'll also get access to our monthly Boba Chats, a bonus podcast where Rira and I and some guests will get together each month and have a more casual discussion on stuff that may or may not be book related, as well as answer some listener Q&A. Honey Boba members will also have access to a poll to help decide an official Books and Boba book pick once per quarter. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, support Books and Boba on Patreon by going to patreon.com/booksandboba. As always, Rira and I really appreciate your support. All right, thanks for listening, and I'm on with the show.
You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And hey, you're listening to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here for our June 2023 mid-month book news check-in, where we go over the latest Asian American book and publishing news. Rira, how have you been? Summer has come to LA. I feel like it's been kind of hot lately.
I mean, it's been pretty gloomy lately. June gloom, and we finally have sun again.
Yeah. The summer solstice was yesterday as of recording. Today is the Chinese Dragon Boat Festival. So it's if you are Chinese or if you celebrate, it's the day where we eat what is colloquially known as Chinese tamales, but it's basically our sticky rice wrapped in like lotus leaves. Have a couple in the fridge right now waiting for dinner.
Ah, interesting. I did not know that was a thing that people celebrated.
Yeah, well, it's 端午节, which technically is kind of like the summer festival. It just so happens that it's the holiday where dragon boat races are often held, so which is why we call it the Dragon Boat Festival. Yeah, culture.
Culture.
But yeah, as always, we'll start off our mid-month check-in with the latest Asian American publishing announcements compiled from Publishers Weekly, Twitter, and wherever else Rira gets her book news from. So yeah, let us get started. Rira, what is our first publishing announcement?
Okay, so our first book deal is Ace Books bought North American rights to Fantasy Duology by K.X. Song, the author of An Echo in the City. The first title, The Night Ends with Fire, is inspired by the Chinese folktale about Mulan, a female warrior, as well as the 14th century Chinese historical novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms. According to the publisher, the book is about a brave young woman who goes to extraordinary lengths to rewrite her destiny and escape the forces that would conscript her to a life without agency. And it is slated for summer 2024.
Yeah, this sounds really interesting. The inspirations are things that I'm very familiar with. Mulan is a famous Chinese folktale that was famously adapted by Disney for their animated film. And The Romance of the Three Kingdoms is probably one of the most famous historical Chinese epics. It's been adapted into TV shows, movies, video games. Everyone's really familiar with those characters. So, I'm assuming that this is going to be a story about a girl who pretends to be a man and enters into the world of like feudal Chinese politics and warfare.
Yeah, it's not really much for us to go on because we've seen a lot of Mulan and Romance of the Three Kingdoms adaptations over the years. So Yeah, I wonder what new thing will be brought to the table with this book.
Yeah, and I wonder who they're going to be mapping the Mulan character onto. Will she be taking the place of like one of the generals, like Liu Bei or Zhang Fei, or will she be one of the cunning like political and military strategists like Cao Cao or Zhuge Liang? Very exciting. Very excited to learn about this. And so, yeah, congrats to KX Song on the book deal. Next up, Putnam won North American rights at auction to Hisashi Kashiwai's The Kamogawa Food Detectives. Originally published in Japan, the novel became a bestseller and was also adapted into a television series. It's about a father-daughter detective team who also owns a restaurant and recreate dishes from their customers' past, dishes that might just hold the keys to forgotten memories and future happiness. Publication in North America is set for spring 2024.
This sounds, I don't know, like, I feel like in Japanese literature and media, there's always this thing with magical food and magical cafes and
It is a very
restaurants.
Japanese, like, novel premise, right? It reminds me of things like the Before the Coffee Gets Cold or Tokyo Midnight Diner, where it's like you got your case of the week and it's solved through emotions brought on by food/magic.
It kind of reminds me of, that scene in Ratatouille where the food critic
Yeah.
like flashes back to his childhood memory of eating his favorite dish. And I'm like, what if it's that, but kind of like more serialized?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it's serialized. It doesn't sound like it's just like one big case.
I mean, it's probably similar to Before the Coffee Gets Cold, where you have like a bunch of like stories that may become interconnected towards the end. Kind of similar to, if you ever played Ace Attorney games, kind of like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds really interesting. And I'm kind of interested in seeing the TV series as well. It sounds like an interesting concept to translate it into like a live action. But okay, yeah. Our next book deal is Anthenium won in a 5-house auction Australian storyboard artist Ranran Zhou's graphic novel debut, a middle grade, tentatively titled Momo, and a sequel. Both books star precocious young witch Momo Lim, who lives in a retirement home for magical creatures and yearns to become a detective like her late father. In book 1, Momo bites off more than she can chew by trying to solve a poisoning that takes place at a garden party. Publication of the first book is scheduled for 2026. Another detective story, father-daughter.
Yeah. Love that we're getting 2 of these in our book news. And this sounds really cool. Like Witch Detectives for middle grade. I would read that. And I'm not a middle grade reader.
Retirement home for magical creatures. That sounds like a pretty cool place to live in.
Yeah, this sounds really cool. And I'm excited to find out what kinds of creatures are living in this retirement home. Okay, next up, Charles Bridge bought world rights to If Lin Can, a picture book biography of NBA star Jeremy Lin by Richard Ho and illustrated by Huỳnh Lin and Phun Nguyen Quang. The book offers hope and reassurance to young readers who have ever felt less than because of what they look like or what people expect from them, with particular resonance for kids of Asian descent. A spring 2024 publication is planned. Yeah, Linsanity is back in picture book form.
That is true.
That's pretty
Linsanity is back. Yeah. So it doesn't sound like it's just for sports. It's just any field that Asian American kids would like to pursue in their dreams. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the story of Jeremy Lin, especially of that Insanity run and leading up to it, is still, I think it's still pretty resonant and still like pretty evocative of the Asian American experience, especially for those of us who are pursuing, career paths that aren't quote unquote traditional. So, it's always cool to give our kids models that they can base their dreams off of.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because our next book deal is also about basketball. So Scholastic's imprint graphics bought Wish I Was a Baller, a 90s set middle grade graphic memoir by Emmy-winning writer-producer Amar Shah and illustrated by Eisner-winning comic creator Rashad Doucet. The story follows Amar's real-life experiences as a teen sports journalist covering the golden era of the NBA and sparking an unlikely friendship with Shaq, while navigating high school, first love, and his Indian American identity. Publication is planned for 2025.
Yeah, see? Sports dreams can take many forms, whether you're a baller or a journalist, which are ballers in my mind as well. And I guess there's just something about sports stories and sports-related stories that are just universally inspiring, right?
Yeah, there's a reason why sports animes do really well.
Yeah. All right. Our next deal, Bloomsbury acquired This Is How You Fall in Love by Anika Hussain, a debut YA novel about Zara, a rom-com obsessed teen on the hunt for her own great love story, who agrees to fake date her best friend Adnan in an effort to cover up his new secret relationship. Publication is slated for February 2024. Yeah, so another classic rom-com with a fake relationship trope. I'm really curious to see what the twist is for this one, specifically Adnan's new secret relationship. Like, I wonder what that is. And obviously it's something that his parents would not approve of, right?
Listen, rom-coms and teen movies have taught me that you shouldn't try to follow the formula of rom-coms and romance novels in order to find relationships and love in your life. It's just it's fiction for a reason. Maybe don't try to force it.
I mean, yes, in real life, but in fiction,
in real life, I mean. I mean, it reminds me a lot of what is it, Maureen Goo's I Believe in a Thing Called Love, where the main character tries to ensnare the boy of her dreams by following K-drama cliches. And it's like, oh, I wonder if this one is also like a manual with a rom-com tropes.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to have like kind of a genre-savvy version of this story, which sounds like a lot of fun.
All right, next up, for six figures, Park Row preempted North American rights to Jane Yang's debut novel, The Lotus Shoes. Set in 19th century China, the historical fiction novel follows the high-born Lin Jing and her maidservant Little Flower, who is gifted with embroidery, as they navigate the limited realities and strict expectations placed upon them. Publication is set for January 2025.
So yeah, this is like a historical fiction taking place in like pre-modern China, focusing on like two young women separated by class. I feel like I can get a sense of the cultural themes of this book. Not necessarily like I can't get a sense of whether it's like going to be humorous or serious, but definitely like it was a time when it was probably really hard to be a girl.
Yeah, it was very hard to be a woman during this time period anywhere. But obviously it sounds like it's very serious, and it sounds kind of like a sweeping historical fiction novel. If you've read like Asian historical fiction novels that take place like in 19th century, 18th century, I feel like there is like a market for this type of story.
And, depending on when in the 19th century, it's a time of cultural change and revolution. So there's a lot of really cool places that the story can go. So I'm really excited to learn more about the Lotus Shoes. Okay, next up. In a 2-book deal, Aladdin acquired Last Chance Academy, a debut middle grade series by Debbi Michiko Florence, author of the Jasmine Toguchi series, and it follows 7th grader Megumi Mizuno, who was sent away to a boarding school known by students as Last Chance Academy, where Meg is determined to win a mysterious treasure hunt with a prize that could reunite her with her dad, but soon learns that there is a bigger mystery at the school to uncover. Publication is slated for spring 2025 and spring 2026.
Dude, the name of this academy is very ominous.
I know.
It sounds like a boarding school where the parents are just like, this is your last chance to be reformed in life.
Yeah, it sounds pretty ominous. And, I wonder what the balance will be between like the sinister stuff and like the fun stuff, because Debbi Michiko Florence, I've heard of the Jasmine Toguchi series and they're known to be pretty fun, right?
Yeah, Debbie writes pretty fun books, so I'm pretty sure this book will be fun as well. All right, next up, Random House's imprint and Schwartz Books bought at auction Palestinian-born author-illustrator Hazar Elbayya's debut picture book, My Olive Tree, as well as an untitled picture book. After learning from her grandfather of the importance of olive trees to her heritage, a girl plants a seed, only to be devastated when the sapling is trampled by invading soldiers. But her community rallies together to plant new trees with the promise that they will survive and grow strong, delivering a hopeful message about the power of unity, culture, and renewal in the face of conflict. Publication is set for fall 2024, and the second book is set for fall 2025.
Yeah, this sounds like I like that it's a picture book with a message of hope, but doesn't shy away from like the realities of growing up in a place where a soldier would trample your olive tree.
Yeah, I really like the message in the book. And it's really nice that, like Marvin said, it has this hopeful message, but at the same time, it doesn't shelter kids from realities that other kids experience overseas. So congratulations to Hazar for their book deal.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Saga Press acquired Canadian actor Katrina Kwan's debut, The Last Dragon of the East, as well as a second title. Described as a light romantic fantasy inspired by Chinese mythology, the book follows Sai, a humble tea shop owner who has the ability to see red threads of fate, invisible strings of magic that connect two halves of one's soul. Despite his ability, his own thread is gray and frayed, and he has no idea why. After stumbling into a devious plot to hunt down the last dragon of the East, could his mysterious fated half be the key to unlocking his past, present, and future? Publication is set for fall 2024. Yeah, this is the type of like high concept Chinese mythology inspired story that I can get behind. I feel like the red threads of fate is something that I've seen used a lot in like webtoons.
Yeah, and also animes. I mean, it is a very like romantic notion, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about this last dragon of the East. You know, like, is there a fairy tale that is about last dragons or like
I don't think so. The Last Dragon of the East in this story seems more of like a setting thing than like an adaptation of like a Chinese folktale, because I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah. I mean, why are they hunting down the dragon? That's sad. Animal abuse. Anyway, next up, Orca bought world rights to A Sky for the Birds, written by Rina Singh and illustrated by Barkha Lohia. This picture book tells the uplifting story of two Muslim brothers in Delhi who, against all odds, have devoted their lives to rescuing and rehabilitating black kites, the majestic birds of prey injured in the polluted skies of the capital city. Publication is slated for fall 2025.
Yeah, just like My Olive Tree. I love that it's a story of like people doing good deeds, but in the backdrop of like, in this case, environmental calamity. Again, it's really cool to see children's books that are like morality tales, but taking place in places that, you know, the reader might not be familiar with, and they can learn more about other cultures in addition to like environmental issues as well.
Okay, so I just Googled black kites and they look like hawks. And I also found out this is based on a real story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a documentary directed by Shanak Sen, and it's about the two brothers who are, it's about two brothers who are trying to rescue these birds. Like that's really cool.
That's even more inspiring now.
Yeah. I didn't think that was real, but wow, it's actually real.
Yeah. All right, our next deal. Abrams bought Hannah Alkaf's The Beast Beneath the Winds, a middle grade anthology and compendium of mythical creatures from Southeast Asian lore. Contributors include Brandon Hong, Dal Fumaruk, Aaron Entrada Kelly, Gail de Villanueva, Greg Van Ikut, Hannah Alkaf, Jesse Hughes Tanto, June Ciel Tang, May Respicio, Monica Hussain, Nadia McHale, Shin Ying Kaur, Van Hong, Vida Bibi, and VT Bidania. And the compendium will be illustrated by Jess and Sin Wabowo. Publication is set for spring 2025, and a contest will allow winners to join the group of contributors.
Yeah. So the contest guidelines are listed on hannahAlkaf.com, and you can send your story with the subject line Anthology Contest to the email beastsofc@gmail.com. And the deadline is August 11th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you are planning to submit for this anthology, make sure you get your time zone correctly.
Yeah, you can have your story presented alongside all of these amazing authors. And yeah, I think it's really cool that we're getting a lot more stories about creatures from Southeast Asian mythology, which is something that we don't see as often as, say, like East Asian creatures. So yeah, looking forward to this compendium and short story collection.
All right. Our next book deal is Astra's imprint Minerva bought world rights for Simone, written by Pulitzer Prize winning author Viet Thanh Nguyen and illustrated by Minnie Phan. In this picture book, a Vietnamese American girl's life is transformed and her ecological consciousness is awakened after a wildfire forces her and her ma, who shares her own experience of environmental displacement as a child in Vietnam, to evacuate their home. Publication is set for spring 2024. Viet Thanh Nguyen, the author of The Sympathizer and the Refugees collection. So it is a picture book. So nice to see him dip his toes into children's literature.
Yeah, much like the other picture books that we mentioned, it is a story that can teach our kids about ecological issues while also exposing them to cultures outside of their own, which, I love that this is a trend now.
I mean, it has to be a trend because we're living it. It's our life. We are living in the age of climate change. And it's really nice that we are getting more literature that is teaching kids about the importance of preserving our planet. So, yeah, really glad that this is part of a new expanding genre.
All right. Next up, Penguin Workshop bought Threads, the debut picture book by embroidery artist Ashley Wong. Sunny and Gemma are best friends, but when Gemma moves away, they learn that it's okay for different friendships to fray or strengthen over time. Publication is scheduled for spring 2026.
I feel like this is a very cute story and very important because, like as you grow up, like when you're young, you think that you're going to be friends forever, but learning at a young age that, people grow apart and people change, and that's okay. I think that is something that kids can benefit from learning early on.
Yeah, I mean, the cool part about books like this that teaches concepts like it's okay for this to happen, or it's okay for things to not be permanent, or that environmental change is a thing, is it also equips our kids with the language to process these emotions when they run up against them. And I like that books like this teach our kids that even in situations that aren't ideal, it's not like the end of the world, right? There are ways to deal with it. There's ways to move forward, maintaining friendships that may not be the same as you grow up. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a concept that even adults struggle with.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one last book deal to announce. Disney Hyperion bought in a 2-book deal world rights to Sophia Lee Can Fly, written by Marie Tang and illustrated by Lenny Wen. When Sophia's family finally agrees to take her trapezing, she has one chance to take the leap and prove that the sky's the limit, as long as you try. Publication is set for spring 2025. Trapezing? That sounds frightening.
Yeah, I would not. Although, if I do have a harness, then maybe. I have done not trapezing per se, but like ropes courses where I had to jump and grab onto a trapeze handle.
I wonder how long it took for the parents to agree. Hey, yeah.
But you know what they say. There's nothing that better teaches courage and strength than circus acts like trapezing. That's what they say, right?
I don't know if that's what they say, but I do know the saying, in order to fly, you must leap. So I guess it's taking that adage quite literally in this book.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, well, that will do it for our book deal announcements for June 2023. Moving on to our news segment. Rira, there seems to have been some tea going on in the publishing world. Can you let me know what's going on with the British Museum?
Yeah, sure. Let me just say that book tea has been very strong, and there's been a lot of caucasity in on book Twitter lately. Okay, so the British Museum stole stuff again. I mean, no surprise. And Vancouver-based editor and translator Yilin Wang took to Twitter, and they said that they did not receive any credit or reimbursement for their translations of poetry by Chu Jin, a feminist and revolutionary that the New York Times has dubbed China's Joan of Arc. And this exhibit, China's Hidden Century, it opened on May 18th. So it's been open for quite a while. And on June 19th, Wang tweeted, "Hey, British Museum, I am demanding all my translations to be removed from the China's Hidden Century exhibit and all materials pertaining to the exhibit, including the exhibition books, all video, photo, display materials, all signage, all digital and print materials such as brochures, and anywhere else where translations have appeared, unless the museum makes a proper offer to compensate me and the compensation is given immediately." Now, from what I've heard today is June 22nd, the British Museum did release a statement, and they said that they're working with Elin on getting compensation. But it was like a very typical, like, "Oh, we are sorry that, it's like, we are sorry that this happened. I have no idea how this happened." And it's like, it happened because you had people who were too lazy to do citations correctly.
Okay, so what exactly happened? Like, the British Museum put up this exhibit and they used Yilin Wang's translations without telling them?
Yeah, without telling them.
Wow.
And, from like Twitter, Yilin was saying like how like translation takes a very long time. Like how like they would spend weeks and like 15 to 20 hours just like making sure that the translations are correct. And the fact that they just lifted the translations without giving any credit is, I don't know. Like, I feel like in academia, like citations are such a big issue. And it's like one of the first things that you learn as someone who works in research. So it's kind of like appalling to me that they just quote unquote forgot. And the fact that the British Museum, the organizers of the exhibition, they had a grant. They received a grant of more than $900,000 from the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council. So they had money and they did not use any of it to give to Yilin Wang, the translator. So I heard about this through Anton Her, actually, who we've had on the show. He was the translator of I Want to Die But Eat Tteokbokki.
And the upcoming BTS book. Don't forget about that.
Yes, that too. So like him just talking about how, like translators, like they have to go through so much training when it comes to like understanding copyright laws. And he talked about how like he had to translate poems himself, like from French poetry, because if he used just other people's translations, he would have to track down the original translation and cite it. And he's like, well, that is like close to near impossible, too much labor. So I guess I'll just translate it myself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with the legal side of translations, but it does sound like someone at the British Museum decided to cut corners, Google a translation and paste it on their materials without going through like the process of making sure everything is above board. Like when I produce a show, when I have to use archival or if I have to use like citations, I always have to track down like whoever created like the composition or the original piece to ask for permission or to like see if there's a licensing fee, right? I mean, that's just basic producing. And so someone at the British Museum definitely messed up here.
Yeah. And also like, it's just ironic to me that this is an exhibition on like, Chinese history, and the British Museum has a history of stealing Chinese artworks.
I mean, that's just art.
This is a whole
right?
theme
that's
in
like,
Portrait of a
maybe
Thief.
This is just performance art put on by the British Museum.
Yeah, that's why I was like not surprised at all that it was it was the British Museum that made the mistake. So I was like, huh.
I mean, yeah,
go figure.
Trying to save some money, but you should have either paid her, you should have either paid them or just do it yourself. Because, yeah.
And it also like brought up conversations amongst translators on just like how non-Asian translators of Asian history and Asian literature, they get more opportunities and acclaim, whereas it's like much harder for translators from translators who are native to that country or like more, I guess, like personally tied to that country's history to get those opportunities. And it's like, I mean, not surprised at all.
I mean, this is the world we live in. Well, hopefully Yiling will get theirs. And, you know, I'd like to think that the British Museum has learned a lesson, but, you know, we'll see.
I did hear that the one of the organizers, Julia Lovell, who's the University of London modern...
Wait, her name is Lovell? Like Professor Lovell from Babel? This is just...
Lovell. Yeah. But like she's
automatically sus to me.
She's the history professor at University of London in the modern Chinese department. And she did directly contact Yiling Wang as soon as the news broke. So yeah. So it is nice that the organizers are taking steps to correct this, but of course it's like you should have done this before you decided to hold this exhibition and steal translations from someone.
So. I mean, I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that Yiling definitely has a strong case here because they're using their translations.
All right. So our next cup of book tea is about this white author whose debut novel is written from a POV of a Japanese character. And this book is a historical fantasy set in 1877 Kyoto. And it follows a samurai's daughter who must uncover her father's truth and find her own place of belonging during the Emperor Meiji's tumultuous reign to defeat ghosts plaguing her visions and the city, according to publishers Marketplace. And Natalie Jacobson, like I said, is a white author. She is neither Japanese nor was raised in Japan. She is not, from what I hear, she's only lived in Japan for 4 years. So Asian book Twitter called this out, being like, hey, like, are you sure this is your story to tell? As someone who is not Japanese, who did not grow up there and has like no personal ties to it. And it's been interesting to see how the conversation has unfolded on book Twitter, especially from like Japanese American authors.
Yeah, I mean, it's always such an interesting conversation of like who gets to tell what story. And I feel like part of this is also on the publisher, like whoever greenlit this and did not see this PR like train wreck coming, because I mean, it's 2023. This type of optic just does not play well at all, especially in today's social media world.
I will say that the editor who did pick up this book is Japanese.
Oh.
But I still don't. Okay, so we're getting into murky waters of who is able to tell what story and like what is okay if you're writing a story that's not based on your own experience. And I think, and like what I've been relying on is like opinions and statements from actual Japanese American, Japanese diaspora authors. And Emery Lee, who is the author of Meet Cute Diary and Cafe Con Lychee, they said on Twitter, okay, look, I'ma be real here. I've been trying to publish a Japanese fantasy since 2018. And I accept that my writing might just suck, but it's exhausting seeing every book be called quote unquote anime inspired or use Japanese myths and history without Japanese faces behind them. It's exhausting to constantly hear that we don't need more Japanese books because there aren't even that many Japanese Americans or Japanese people who are being oppressed. Or to hear everyone say Japan is so loved and there are so many Japanese stories and still we are absent. So it's not just Emery, but like other Japanese American authors have said, like, have shared their experience on how they've tried to sell stories about Japanese culture and their heritage, but be rejected, and then have white authors, non-Asian authors, pitch pretty much like the same thing and then get greenlit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what rubs me the wrong way about this announcement is that I feel like this is the type of story where an own voice author would probably be able to bring more nuance to the whole thing. I mean, it is historical fiction or historical fantasy, but if you're going to do a historical fantasy, why not just go all the way do fantasy, and like that way you have more leeway on the nuance. I don't know. It's the fact that it is historical, set in like actual Japan in the 1800s. That like I don't know if I want, like personally, I want to read that story from like a white author.
I think it's also like you have to think about it in historical context too, because the Meiji era was a very pivotal time period in Japan. And even though Japan wasn't, officially colonized, they had to, assimilate a lot to British culture, and they've lost a lot of their own culture to that process. So having a white author write a historical fantasy novel that's set during this like tumultuous time period, and they didn't grow up in Japan and really like know the history inside out. I don't know, it's very complicated. And I think Amanda of Bookish Brews explained it best on Twitter. She said, look, I wish that we did live in a culture where anyone could write any character/story with respect and dignity. But considering the history of how white people have done it and how many people are systematically barred from telling their own stories, we aren't really in that place as it stands. So
there's definitely some like equity issues with this whole story as well, right? Like the fact that this author was able to get this deal, where you can imagine other writers who are own voices might have a hard time because of the myriad like systemic institutional roadblocks that are in the way of like writers of color. It's a lot more than just saying that I don't think this author should be writing this story. It's also asking, why are we picking this story from this author to publish?
It's a work in process. And obviously, like, I feel like people can write whatever they want, but they have to take the consequences with it. So, I mean, it is a very complicated, murky gray area. But I forget. Okay, so I found out about this because I saw Hannah Lee's tweet. And Hannah Lee is the author of Road to Ruin, which is coming out later this year. She wrote, "Me living in the United States since the day I was born. It's so weird to be diaspora Asian. Feels like I'll never be 100% American, but I'd never be accepted anywhere else. What am I? A white person who just moved to Japan. Nihonjin desu." With like the Japanese Tori emoticon. And it's just like so funny because if you look at... that's what's on the author's Twitter profile. Yeah, if you look at Natalie Jacobson's Twitter profile, you see like the Japanese Tori symbol. And I'm like, why do they always expose themselves in the bio of their handles? It's quite funny to me. But it's also just like, just because the editor is Japanese and maybe they had Japanese sensitivity readers, I feel like it's messy. Yeah, I mean, to reiterate, like I love Asian inspired fantasy. I have zero interest in reading this book. So a good alternative is to read Kylie Lee Baker's book, The Keeper of Night, which is also like a 19th century Japanese fantasy novel. So support authors who are from that culture. I wonder how much longer they'll be doing this to us. Probably forever, Marvin. We should really read Yellowface by Rebecca Kwong.
We should.
Because a lot of people have referenced that in this conversation. So I'm like, okay. Like, we should read that. I don't know if it's going to be for book club because we did read Babel, but, just like maybe for our Honey Boba episode, just chat about...
You don't need to convince me to read a R.F. Kwong book. I'm going to read it anyways. And then, yeah, we should definitely find a way or figure out a way to do that with the book club, either as a book club pick or as a like you said, a Honey Boba thing. Definitely, it's on my TBR list, so I'm very excited for it.
But I cannot believe these two things happened in the span of 1 week. I was like, what is happening?
I mean, I don't know why you're surprised. I feel like this stuff happens every day in the publishing world. We just don't hear about all of them.
Yeah, but like the fact that my timeline was flooded with like both of these things happening at once, I was like,
yeah,
what is happening in the world? It took me a while because there were a lot of subtweeting, and I was like, got to go down this rabbit hole and find the tea. And I'm glad I did because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's some good tea. All right. Well, on that note, that'll do it for this mid-month episode. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you enjoy our podcast, there are many ways that you can support, either by buying a book from our online bookstore, by going to booksandboba.com, or by joining our Patreon, where you can be a part of our online Discord community, as well as have access to our bonus Honey Boba episodes every month. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to patreon.com/booksandboba. We would love to see you online. Before we go, Rira, can you remind us what we are reading for the month of June?
We are reading We Have Always Been Here by Lina Wen. It is a psychological thriller that takes place in a spaceship where all of the crew members are slowly going insane. So it is very alien-like, and I'm really excited to talk about this on the show. It's been very long since we've had like a sci-fi book. So yeah.
Yeah. And if you finish the book and want to share your thoughts, as always, you can let us know on Goodreads or on our Discord if you're a Patreon subscriber. We love to include the thoughts of our book club members in our discussion episodes. But with that, that'll do it for this mid-month check-in. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Rira Yu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @booksandboba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Life gets a little crazy sometimes. Sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's beautiful, and sometimes it can just piss us off. Enter First of All Podcast. It's a safe space for real conversations about the things that we all struggle with, celebrate, contemplate, and work through in our daily lives. I'm your host, Mindy Chang. I'm an actor, filmmaker, and entrepreneur with a colorful background, a full life, and brilliant friends who I love to unpack life with to share with all of you. They are everyday people like you and me, ranging from award-winning artists, cultural icons, powerful CEOs, my hilarious childhood friends, and even my mom. Tune in for honest conversations on mental health, dating, sex, family, career, culture, and everything in between. Listen to First of All wherever you find podcasts, part of the Potluck Podcast Collective.